Just like the natural state of our bodies is to be healthy and strong, the natural state of our minds is to be happy and successful. So, why doesn't it feel like it always works out that way? Hey everyone, welcome back. I am Mike Sutton with BeBuildHave.com. I work with first generation business leaders who are getting burnout on all the doing and are ready to just start being happy and successful in their businesses. And as I said in the intro, happiness and success, I think, are our natural state, but we don't always get there. So why is that? That's maybe the most frustrating question that a lot of my clients ask, and that I was asking for a long time, because I know that for the most part, we're born, for example, with all the tools that we need to walk successfully, the balance, coordination, muscle control, and most of us are able to do that. I think at the same time, we're born with the intellectual and emotional tools that we need to connect and engage with other people in a way that leads us to happiness and success. So where do we get off the mark? And I have three ways that I'm going to share with you, three simple mistakes that you might be making that are contributing if you feel like you're somehow being blocked from the happiness and success that is your natural state. Now, while these are simple, the solutions may not seem easy to you because a lot of times there are lifelong habits that we've built up. And so as I go through these, if your question is, okay, but what do I do about that? That's exactly the question that you should be asking. And it's that question that I help my coaching clients answer and that I try to answer through this podcast. But again, it's not always easy to get there. But the first step in solving a problem is accurately identifying what the problem is. And that's the first step that I want to take you through by identifying which one of potentially these mistakes that you could be making. So here they are. The first mistake is confusing needs and desires. Now, there was a time when we were children that love, acceptance, connection, support, nurturing, being heard were needs. We needed those things and able to grow in a healthy and successful way into the people that we're supposed to be. But as adults, while it's normal to want those things, to desire those things, we don't really need them. Now, the problem comes in if you didn't receive those things as a kid, you might think that you need them now. The need for acceptance is where this comes from. And the reason this is a problem is that if you don't get something that you need, that's an injury or an injustice. And anger is an appropriate response. The purpose of anger is to destroy injustice or to prevent harm. Not getting what you want isn't something that should invoke anger. And anger is going to hurt the situation because it's going to remove you even further away from this thing that you feel like you want instead of moving you closer to something that you legitimately need. And so this confusion causes a lot of social problems because the people around us who could be influenced by you see the anger and move away instead of what you want is for them to move closer. If you recognize that it's a desire that they move closer and that if they don't, you can be disappointed by that, but you'll adapt and come up with a technique. And by not responding in anger, you're not going to be pushing them away. Then a lot of this can start to be resolved because social anxiety, fear is essentially a form of anger, and it's holding people away from you when what you want is to draw them in, but you're at some level potentially making this mistake of confusing needs and desires. The second mistake is blaming yourself for everything. Now, this isn't to say that you necessarily think that everything is your fault, but at some level, it's saying that everything that happens to me is happening to me because I deserve it, or because I'm not good enough, or because I should have been able to do better. And so this can show up as perfectionism. It can show up as shame and lead to addiction. It can show up as depression. It can show up as chronic anxiety or stress or fear. And what's behind it is this idea that if I was better, I wouldn't have this need that's going unfulfilled, and this whole problem would exist. The problem must be me. And again, it stems kind of naturally from how kids process the world. But as an adult, again, it's not the case that you need these things to make you okay. You can just be okay and go about attracting more of what you want into your life because you are good enough. There is nothing wrong with you. Any emotional pain that you're feeling is a normal response to an injury that you faced in the past, or something that you had trouble processing, or something that you weren't taught. And that's okay. You can go back and learn that now. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with you. There's nothing that you did that is at fault here. And then finally, mistake number 3 is trying to avoid pain and discomfort. And this ties in with the other two because tomorrow I'm going to talk about the idea of letting go of these emotional blockages, but this is what happens. If we confuse needs and desires because at some point our needs weren't fulfilled, if we blame ourselves because at some point in the past we weren't good enough to prevent ourselves from being disappointed or to prevent the harm to ourselves or to others, we perceive that as something that we did wrong. And unless we're willing to go and face that discomfort, to face that pain, then we're going to hold on to it. When what we really want to do is let go of it. Now, letting go of it, again, hard. I'm going to talk about that in tomorrow's episode. But that's what it really takes, is going back and facing that pain. Or in the present moment, we don't want to face the disappointment, risk of failure, like I talked about in yesterday's show. So we end up holding ourselves back and not really going full force after the things that we want because we don't want to face that potential failure. So we hold back. So either avoiding pain and discomfort in the present, or avoiding the pain and discomfort that we're still holding on to in the past that's turning into this emotional blockage that we're still carrying around. And the dynamic that any of these 3 mistakes creates, and a lot of times they'll be related, so you might not just have one, you might have 2 or all 3 of them that you're making. And any of these that you recognize, again, the key here is just to recognize that this is the problem that you're trying to solve, the problem is that it conflicts with our natural emotional tools. We've got all the tools that we need to be happy and successful. Anger is a legitimate, emotionally healthy tool meant to destroy injustice and prevent harm, not to ensure that you get what you want. So we have to allow it to work that way. We need to allow it to work correctly. And if we allow our anger to destroy injustice and prevent harm, then it can give way to sorrow, which we have the grieving process to help us face that sorrow, work through that, let it go into the longings that we recognize, what we wanted to have been the case, what we really want out of life, instead of what we need. And then if these emotions are allowed to process through like this, it'll lead us back to this natural state where we can be happy and successful and fulfilled by our businesses and our lives and our families and our relationships. And this is what's at the root. It's this relatively simple emotional system that accounts for all these complex situations that we face in our lives if we let them do their job and not get in the way by making one of these 3 mistakes. So I hope you found value from today's episode. Again, I'm sure it raises more questions than it provides answers, but we really just want to start to clearly define the problem. Stay tuned with other episodes. Check in tomorrow. I'm going to talk about how to let go of the emotional pain, anger, sorrow that you might be holding on to. And if you're on this journey, you really might get a lot of value out of my free 20-minute guided meditation that's really designed to help create and increase and expand this positive emotional mindset, these positive beliefs that'll help make you feel more confident, more comfortable, more capable in your business, and help make you a better leader, a better problem solver, and really more productive and effective in your life. You can find that at bebuildhave.com/meditate. And until we speak again, be the person, build the business, and have the successful life that you want.